It's May 25th, 1994, on a sweltering afternoon in Bangalore. The city's traffic rumbles beyond tall compound walls on Richmond Road, but all is tense and silent inside a palatial mansion. In the courtyard, police and forensic experts huddle as the concrete is pried up, earth scraped away. Suddenly, a heavy wooden box emerges, the air thick with anticipation. The lid is forced open. Inside is a skeleton wrapped in a decayed nightgown, clutching at a foam mattress, wood chips packed under its fingernails. It's a discovery that will horrify India. Proof that Shakereh Khaleeli, one of the city's richest women, had been buried alive by her own husband, right under their home. How did love, trust, and royalty end in such shocking betrayal? This is where her story begins. Shakereh Khaleeli was born on August 27, 1947, in Madras, India, into a life of privilege as the granddaughter of Sir Mirza Ismail, the former Diwan of Mysore, growing up amidst wealth and influence that shaped her early years. Her birth placed her in a prominent family with deep roots in Karnataka's aristocratic history, where she later became a successful real estate developer and philanthropist known for her generous spirit and sharp business acumen. The story takes a dark turn in Bengaluru, then called Bangalore, at her luxurious home on Richmond Road, which would become the chilling crime scene of her disappearance and murder in 1991. This grand residence, with its sprawling courtyard and high walls, was meant to be a sanctuary but transformed into a tomb, hidden right under the noses of neighbors in a bustling urban neighborhood. You see, Shakereh's life seemed picture-perfect on the surface. A woman of means, divorced from her first husband, Akbar Khaleeli, an Indian diplomat with whom she had 4 daughters. But she was searching for something more personal after years in a high-society marriage that had lost its spark. Enter Murali Manohar Mishra, a man from a humble background in Madhya Pradesh, who reinvented himself as Swami Shraddhananda, a self-styled spiritual guru with a knack for charming his way into elite circles. He wasn't born into wealth like Shakereh. No, his origins were modest, perhaps even desperate, driving him to seek out opportunities that could elevate his status. They met in the mid-1980s through mutual connections, and what started as a seemingly innocent encounter blossomed into a whirlwind romance. Shakereh, enchanted by his charisma and promises of spiritual fulfillment, saw in him a partner who could offer the emotional depth her previous life lacked. But here's where things get intriguing. Why would a woman of her stature, with billions in property and a family legacy, fall for someone like him? It was the classic tale of vulnerability meeting opportunism. As Shraddhananda slowly integrated himself into her world, converting to Islam to marry her in 1986, despite cultural and familial eyebrows raised. Their marriage, at first, appeared idyllic. They lived in that opulent Bangalore home, with Shakereh transferring significant assets to him, trusting his intentions as he posed as a devoted husband and spiritual guide. Yet, beneath the facade, tensions simmered. Shraddhananda's greed began to surface, fueled by Shakereh's vast estate, which included prime real estate worth a fortune in rapidly developing Bangalore. He wasn't content with sharing. Reports from those close to the couple hinted at arguments over money, with Shakereh growing suspicious of his financial dealings and his increasing control over her properties. Imagine living in a house where every luxurious detail, the marble floors, the manicured gardens, hides growing distrust. It's like a pressure cooker, slowly building steam. Shakereh's daughters, especially Saba, noticed the changes, but distance and her mother's assurances kept them at bay for a while. As the years passed, Shraddhananda's behavior shifted from charming to calculating. He isolated Shakereh from her family, limiting her contacts and managing her affairs, all while plotting something far more sinister. By 1991, the marriage had soured. Quarrels escalated, and Shakereh confided in friends about feeling trapped. unaware that her husband was already laying the groundwork for her elimination. He started by hiring laborers to dig a deep pit in the courtyard, disguising it as preparation for a water tank, a mundane excuse that masked his deadly intent. Then came the wooden box, a custom-made casket, 2 feet, commissioned from a local carpenter under the pretense of exporting furniture, its sturdy construction ensuring it could hold a body without issue. But who was this carpenter? Details point to a nondescript artisan in Bangalore, paid quietly by Shraddhananda, who likely didn't question the odd specifications. Thinking it was just another job in a city full of eccentric requests, transporting the box added another layer of deception. Shraddhananda enlisted a few trusted domestic workers, half a dozen or so, including servants like Raju, and possibly others from his inner circle, to move it discreetly to the house, carrying it through the property under the cover of night or routine chores to avoid suspicion. These weren't master criminals. They were everyday people, perhaps coerced or bribed, who helped lift and position the heavy box into the pit, their involvement later cracking the case wide open. You have to wonder, what goes through a person's mind when they're asked to dig a hole or haul a mysterious crate? Did they sense something off? Or was the Swami's influence that strong? As May 1991 approached, the tension rose palpably. Shakereh, oblivious, continued her daily routines, sipping tea in the very home that would become her grave. The air in that courtyard must have felt heavier, charged with unspoken malice as Shraddhananda finalized his plan, importing sleeping pills from Madras to ensure she wouldn't fight back. Shakereh's last days were marked by eerie normalcy. She attended social events, managed her properties, and perhaps shared laughs with staff, all while her husband watched with cold calculation. On May 28, 1991, the date etched in infamy, the scene was set, the pit ready, the box waiting, and Shakereh unsuspecting as she retired for the evening. The sensory detail that haunts me is the faint, metallic tang of fresh dug earth mixing with the evening jasmine from the garden, a stark contrast to the horror about to unfold. And in Shraddhananda's mind, one high-stakes thought loomed, "This is it. Her wealth will finally be mine. No more sharing. No more fights." The stage was set for betrayal, the kind that turns love into a nightmare, building toward an act so gruesome it would shock a nation. It was a typical evening in late May 1991, the kind where Bangalore's humid air clung to everything, and the distant hum of city traffic filtered through the high walls of the Richmond Road home. Shakereh, after a long day handling her real estate dealings, settled into her routine, perhaps chatting with the household staff about dinner or the next day's plans. Nothing out of the ordinary, just the quiet rhythms of a life she thought was secure. Shraddhananda, playing the part of the attentive husband, prepared her tea himself that night, a small gesture that masked the deadly intent behind it. He had sourced heavy-duty sleeping pills from Madras earlier, imported ones strong enough to knock her out cold without immediate suspicion. As she sipped, the bitterness might have registered faintly, but trust blinded her to the danger. After all, why would the man she'd married for love and spiritual companionship turn on her like this? The pills took effect quickly, her eyelids growing heavy as she headed to bed, unaware that this simple act of relaxation was the prelude to her end. With Shakereh unconscious, Shraddhananda moved with calculated precision, his plan coming together in the shadows of the courtyard where the pit lay waiting. Now a yawning 7-foot-deep void disguised under a tarp and excuses about construction. He called upon the domestic workers, loyal but unwitting accomplices like Raju, the gardener, and a handful of others who'd been roped in over the weeks with promises of extra pay or veiled threats of job loss, to help with the heavy lifting. These were folks from the neighborhood, scraping by in the city's underbelly, probably thinking they were just moving some odd furniture piece for the Swami's export business, as he'd spun the tale. The wooden box, that eerie 2 by 7 by 2 foot contraption, had been hauled in days earlier by the same group, its solid teak frame weighing a ton, even empty, positioned near the pit with ropes and sweat under the dim glow of a single bulb. Picture it. The box, unassuming on the outside, like an oversized trunk for shipping goods abroad, but inside lined crudely for what it was meant to contain: a living person. As the night deepened, Shraddhananda dragged Shakereh's limp body on her own mattress from the bedroom, through a discreet hole he'd cut in the wall to avoid the main house's prying eyes, straight to the waiting box. Her weight, over 60 kilos, made it a grueling task, so he enlisted 2 or 3 servants to assist, their hands gripping the mattress edges as they shuffled her into the pit's edge, the earth still loose and smelling of damp soil. But here's the gut-wrenching part. The sleeping pills weren't lethal. They were meant to immobilize, not kill, ensuring she wouldn't scream or fight during the initial burial. But forensics later showed she regained partial consciousness, her fingerprints clawing desperately at the box's interior as oxygen dwindled. Shraddhananda folded her into the box carefully, almost tenderly in his delusion, placing her on the mattress with a pillow under her head, as if tucking her in for a long sleep, then nailed the lid shut with hammers borrowed from the tool shed, the sharp echoes muffled by the night. The servants, faces pale in the moonlight, lowered the casket into the pit using ropes tied to its corners, their arms straining as dirt began to rain down, one shovelful at a time. You can't help but ask, how does a person bury someone alive without cracking? Shraddhananda shoveled methodically, layer by layer, mixing mud and cement to seal it all, while the workers followed his orders, perhaps whispering among themselves about the strangeness, but too scared or indebted to question. By dawn on May 29th, the spot was smoothed over, looking like any other patch of courtyard, with plans to pour concrete the next day under the guise of finishing that fake water tank. Shakereh lay there, in the dark confines, her breath shallow at first, then frantic as the air thinned. Hours, maybe, of muffled terror, her body shifting against the wood, but no one above to hear. The sensory nightmare of it, the suffocating closeness of the box walls, the musty scent of fresh wood and earth pressing in, her mind racing through confusion to panic as realization dawned too late. Shraddhananda, wiping sweat from his brow, returned to the house as if nothing happened, even hosting a small gathering that evening, his calm demeanor a masterclass in deception. In the days that followed, the tension escalated as Shraddhananda began his web of lies to cover the deed. He claimed Shakereh had gone on a spiritual retreat to the Himalayas, a vague explanation that bought him time since she was known for her philanthropic travels. But cracks appeared almost immediately. Her daughters, particularly Saba from her first marriage, grew worried when calls went unanswered, and visits to the house yielded only Shraddhananda's evasive smiles and promises of her return. The family, already strained by the interfaith marriage and his growing influence, started pressing. Phone calls turned to visits, and whispers of foul play circulated among friends in Bangaluru's elite circles. Shraddhananda doubled down, forging letters in her handwriting about extended trips and even staging phone calls with a voice mimicking hers. But the absences piled up, turning suspicion into a slow-burning alarm. By late 1991, the stakes ratcheted higher. Shakereh's business partners noticed irregularities in property deals. Deals Shraddhananda was rushing through in her name, siphoning assets worth crores into his control. The police got involved peripherally at first, through missing person reports from concerned relatives, but Shraddhananda charmed his way out, posing as the distraught husband searching for his lost wife. Imagine the frustration. Every lead a dead end. Every question met with spiritual platitudes about her inner journey, while he lived lavishly off her fortune, throwing parties and expanding his guru persona. The workers who'd helped? They stayed silent at first, bound by fear. But one by one, guilt and rumors eroded their loyalty. A servant's offhand comment to a neighbor about the strange box job planted the first real seed of doubt. As 1992 dawned, the pressure mounted. Sabha filed a habeas corpus petition in court, demanding Shraddhananda produce Shakereh or face charges, thrusting the case into the public eye and forcing police to take it seriously. Investigations kicked off in earnest. Officers combed the house, interviewed staff, and scrutinized financial records, uncovering Shraddhananda's shady past and his rapid wealth accumulation post-disappearance. He stonewalled them masterfully for years, moving assets abroad and even attempting to remarry. But the noose tightened with each evasive answer. Witnesses recalled the pit digging, the box delivery, and his late-night instructions. The climax built relentlessly, a psychological thriller in real life, as detectives pieced together the puzzle, their persistence clashing against his arrogance. By 1994, a breakthrough came through a sting operation. Under interrogation, a servant cracked, leading Shraddhananda to the courtyard where, with a smirk, he pointed to the now cemented spot, saying, "She's right here. I've been with her every day." The exhumation that followed was the peak of horror. Jackhammers cracking concrete, the box unearthed intact, Shakereh's remains inside. Mummified but unmistakable, her skeletal hands still posed in struggle. Forensic teams swarmed the scene, confirming the unimaginable: she'd been alive when buried. The sleeping pills wearing off just enough for her to fight. DNA tests, pioneering for India at the time, verifying her identity amid the national media frenzy. Shraddhananda's empire of lies crumbled in that moment, arrested on the spot as the courtyard, once a symbol of their shared life, became a testament to his monstrosity. The rising tension had exploded into raw, visceral truth, leaving everyone, family, police, the public, reeling from the brutality of it all. The morning after the exhumation in May 1994 dawned on a transformed scene at the Richmond Road bungalow, where police tape fluttered in the breeze and forensic experts in white suits sifted through the unearthed horror, the air thick with the scent of disturbed earth and chemical preservatives. Shakereh's skeletal remains, still curled on that faded mattress inside the wooden box, told a story more damning than any confession. The scratch marks on the interior panels, splinters under her nails, and the position of her hands clutching desperately, all pointing to the agonizing truth that she'd been conscious and fighting for her life as the dirt piled on. DNA testing, a groundbreaking first in Indian forensics, matched her teeth and hair samples to her parents' blood, confirming the identity beyond doubt and shattering any lingering illusions Shraddhananda might have clung to. He stood there during the dig, handcuffed but composed, watching as the box was lifted out with cranes, his face a mask of resignation now that his 3-year charade had collapsed under the weight of evidence. The servants who'd helped, Raju the gardener, Josephine the maid, and the others, were rounded up too, their stories spilling out in waves of relief and fear, admitting they'd believed Shakereh was already dead when they lowered the box. Coerced by the Swami's authority and promises, arrested on the spot, Shraddhananda was hauled to the Ashok Nagar police station, where the interrogation room became a confessional of sorts. He laid it all bare, from the spiked tea to the nailed-shut casket, blaming the marriage's failures on Shakereh's family ties and his own mounting debts. But the motive boiled down to cold greed, her billions in properties, now his to claim without interference. The police pieced together the timeline meticulously. The pit dug weeks earlier under the water tank ruse. The box commissioned from that anonymous Bangalore carpenter who'd crafted it on wheels for easy export, transported by the reluctant staff in broad daylight disguised as routine deliveries. Neighbors, who'd partied on the very spot where she lay buried, came forward with tales of his lavish lifestyle, dancing in the courtyard, selling off chunks of her estate. while he kept her alive on paper through that sham company. Shakereh Khaleeli financed Khaleeli, signing deals in her name for years after her death. You wonder, how does someone sleep at night knowing they've turned a home into a grave? The investigation, sparked by Saba's persistent habeas corpus petition back in 1992, had dragged through wild goose chases and his anticipatory bail antics. But the sting operation, undercover chats with ex-servants, finally broke him, turning a missing persons case into one of India's most reviled murders. As the news exploded across headlines, the nation reeled. Front pages screamed, "Buried alive for billions," and TV crews swarmed the bungalow, interviewing stunned family members who described Shakereh as vibrant, generous, the kind of woman who'd fund orphanages and build communities, not end up a victim of her own trust. Her daughters, especially Saba, faced the media storm with quiet devastation. They'd lost their mother twice, once to his manipulations, then to the brutal confirmation of her fate, vowing to see justice served as they fought to reclaim the properties he'd looted. The trial kicked off in 1997 at the Bangalore Sessions Court, a spectacle that drew packed galleries and expert witnesses, pathologists detailing the slow suffocation, financial auditors tracing the asset grabs, and even the carpenter, if tracked down, corroborating the box's innocuous origins. Khaleeli, now stripped of his guru robes and spiritual swagger, took the stand in his defense, spinning tales of a stillborn son and tantric promises gone wrong, claiming Shakereh wanted out of the marriage as much as he did. But the judge saw through it, calling his actions a rarest of rare betrayal in the 2003 verdict. The courtroom buzzed as the death sentence was read, hanging by the neck until dead, for premeditated murder, a penalty that echoed the heinous method of the crime, with the judge emphasizing how he'd misused her confidence after she'd given him everything. Appeals flew to the Karnataka High Court, which in September 2005 upheld the conviction unanimously, praising the Sessions Court's reasoning and slamming Khaleeli's pathological lies that prolonged the family's agony. He languished on death row, filing mercy petitions and dragging out the process. But in 2008, the Supreme Court stepped in, commuting the sentence to life imprisonment without remission or parole. A life means life ruling that set a precedent for non-remissible terms in brutal cases, ensuring he'd rot in Bellary Central Prison without early release hopes. Even in 2024, his latest Supreme Court plea for leniency was shot down. The justice is unmoved by his age or claims of reform, reiterating the crime's diabolical nature. The accomplices got lighter sentences, some probation, others a few years after turning state's evidence, their roles deemed peripheral to his masterminding. In the resolution's quieter folds, the case rippled through Indian law and society. It pioneered video-recorded exhumations to preserve evidence and spotlighted DNA's role in forensics, tools that became standard in later investigations. Shakereh's family regained much of the estate through civil suits, turning her legacy toward philanthropy in her name, while Bangalore's elite whispered about the dangers of charismatic outsiders preying on the vulnerable. Media kept it alive, a 1990s sensation evolving into podcasts, books, and that 2023 Amazon Prime docuseries, Dancing on the Grave, which revisited the courtyard parties atop her tomb, interviewing Saba about the lingering trauma. Khaleeli, now in his late 70s, fades into prison obscurity. His spiritual empire crumbled. A cautionary tale of how greed can bury not just a body, but a lifetime of goodwill. For the audience tuning into true crime like this, it leaves you pondering. In a world of facades, how do we spot the monsters before they strike? The Khaleeli case, from privilege to unimaginable horror, reminds us that justice, though slow, can unearth even the deepest deceptions, closing the book on one woman's nightmare while etching it into history's grim pages.